feeling that something. And it says, students teach teachers. Teachers at College Orphan Junior High School in Ufield, Iowa, were surprised early this Monday by an educational change of pace instigated by the Ufield County school system. Instead of students filing into classes to hear the teachers lecture at the head of the class, teachers found themselves being herded into the classrooms where young people lectured and assigned homework to the dumbfounded grown-ups. Students infiltrated the PA system, coached the day's sports, and managed all extracurricular activities. It was a surreal experience, said one teacher when asked to describe her day. So I know that this sounds incredibly strange, and I'll be asking some questions about it at the end of the presentation, but students teaching teachers may not be such an isolated occurrence. Here are some videos of me talking to teachers. This is like the voice of impending doom here. Actually, I know it looks like impending doom is not so far away because my video is not loading, but that's okay. I'll just describe what should be going on while it's buffering. Basically, I do video conferences with, okay, here we go. So this is an example of one of my video conferences. So this is a professional development, and I was talking about value of technology in the classroom and some different tools that you can use. I think we might have been discussing video conferencing and using an interactive whiteboard and a couple other things. So I'm often extolling the value of education technology. Of course, everything goes wrong when I do. And this is something that I do very frequently, a lot during the summer for various conferences, and I come and talk to teachers generally about technology. So today I'm going to talk about technology, but also about more than just technology, but about our attitudes towards learning and teaching, what we think of when we say student versus teacher, and my ideas about those two things. But some of you, and you probably know who you are, will think students teaching teachers, and that's just messing up the natural order of the universe. Well, my way of thinking is that just as it's a good idea, your parents or somebody probably always told you, try stepping into someone else's shoes. It's a good idea to understand what life is like from the perspective of, say, a 13-year-old student. So, I'm stepping into someone else's shoes, and so when it comes to a lot of people believe that the over 30 sometimes to age group has some catching up to do when it comes to technology. An anonymous source who did not want to be named said old people on Facebook, that's just wrong. It was a joke, but I think it was in reaction to Queen Elizabeth II getting a Facebook page or something. So maybe it's less about ability. I know a lot of older people who are better at technology than I am. I can't do like HTML coding or design a website without having it in a drag and drop interface. But I do know if my mom has an issue with her iPhone, I can usually troubleshoot pretty quickly. And I help my dad set up a Facebook account. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've grown up with this kind of thing. When you were little, did you know how to blog, tweet, social network online? Probably not, because they weren't around. So with all these new technologies that are coming up, I just have to learn to adapt to them and sometimes help my parents. So put on your student hat and imagine that you're someone my age. So in 13 years, I've seen a lot of things, the switch from VCRs and videotapes to TiVos and DVDs. And my generation has grown up with cell phones, internet, email, calculators. I'm always laughing when my dad's like, calculators are such a luxury. I had to do all my workout, and I was thinking, wow, that must have been hard. So while that might impede our math skills, I don't know, it's also given us a lot of benefits. And we're able to do things quicker and more efficiently than before, most of the time when we're not on Facebook. During the protests in Iran against the Ahmadinejad regime, then actually people were using Facebook very effectively, and Twitter, and the nightly news channels were getting their reports on Libya and on Egypt, not necessarily always from reporters that they sent out to the field, but from Twitter reports, new eyewitness reports of the 21st century. So you know that all these changes have created new industries. Facebook, Google are some of the biggest hirers today, and we have a lot of different career options ahead of us, but the career options that we have ahead of us today versus the ones that we did maybe 10 or 20 years ago are way different. Because of all these periods of rapid change in recent history, you're probably used to new jobs replacing old ones. We see, manufacturing, construction, more of those jobs going overseas. And if you think about it, you might ask yourself, well, really, who worked in forensic accounting 100 years ago? Or who is a green funeral director or a menu psychologist? That was my favorite. I would really love to be a menu psychologist. But with the revolution of technology over the past 50 years, a lot of those old jobs, like, say, hand-dipping candle maker, have also become very much less common. Technology coordinators in the 1800s were pretty far and few between, I'm assuming. So the 21st century student not only has many different types of jobs to choose from, but there's probably many jobs over a lifetime. The Department of Labor estimates that today's learner will have 10 to 14 jobs by the age of 38. In the olden days, which were not too long ago, you might graduate from high school or college, get a job, and stay with it for pretty much the rest of your life. And today, a far more competitive and volatile economy means that maybe you'll get a job for 2 years, and then you'll move on to another thing, and it'll be just a series of jobs. So the implications of all this for students of my age and for our schools are huge. But if you look at the classroom, then a lot of people say in talks about education and technology that the classroom hasn't changed that much. And if you do look at today's classroom versus the classroom 100 years ago, the blackboard is now a whiteboard or maybe an interactive whiteboard. But things that we still have a lot of that same attitude, that the student is going to sit in a chair and you're going to get this knowledge for 55 minutes or an hour, and then you're going to take a test, and that's what learning is. But now we're seeing some things with project-based learning, with service learning, with students going out and volunteering, but also countless learning, more than just, okay, read from your book and take a test. So the 21st century has brought innovations in technology, science, transportation, and how we get our information. So when it comes to learning and teaching, I think that it's really time for us to catch up. And I have a picture here of someone you might not expect in an education presentation. The reason I have a picture of Angelina Jolie is because I read an article on CNN which had a quote from her, which I thought was kind of relevant. And she said, I do think that we live in a different age and the education system hasn't caught up with our children and our way of life. When we travel, and I'm the first person to say, get the schoolwork done as quickly as possible because let's go out and explore. I'd rather them go to a museum and learn to play guitar and read and pick a book they love. I feel there's got to be a new way to tailor things more directly to our children. Considering the amount of information we have today, the internet and online books, we as parents need to think about how we can shake it up and make it better. So if you're not convinced by me telling you that you need to really add some new elements of learning in addition to what you already have, then hopefully maybe a little star power will also do that. I've actually learned, when I was in language arts last year, we were practicing making propaganda appeals, I think it was. So it was like emotional appeal, logical appeal, and then of course through like bandwagon and all of those. So while I learned a great deal in school, how to do quadratic equations, defining characteristics of modernist poets, and lots else, I've also learned a lot from my life experiences, from going to conferences like this one, and going to sessions. You usually don't expect a 13-year-old student to be going to these sessions about how to differentiate instruction or something, but I've learned a lot from these conferences that otherwise I wouldn't have learned sitting in a classroom. And I actually go to an online school, so that's kind of an interesting element there. All the things that I do while I'm not doing schoolwork, I've also learned a lot from educational websites I visited when I was little, amazing projects I had the opportunity to do, and even my experience teaching others. Because if you're a teacher, then you know that in teaching your students, you find yourself understanding the subject better. If you have to teach somebody else about something, you want to make sure that you know it 100%. I had the opportunity to, math is not my strong suit, and it's not my mom's either, it's more my dad's area, but my mom saw that I was struggling, she's like, well, how about you teach me about what you're learning? And so when I had to actually teach someone about completing a square, I looked it up in the book to make sure I got it right, and it's definitely helps me understand more. So when you think about this clear divide between students and teachers, I think it's a good idea to let them cross over sometimes, but I'll talk more about that later. A wonderful example of project-based learning that I wanted to share comes from edutopia.org, and it comes from kindergarten.